Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be installing a skid plate for the engine and transmission on a 2020 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. I've got the skid plate here behind me, you can see, and it came from a company called ASFIR. I think that's at least how you pronounce it. It's Israeli. I got it for $295 including shipping and tax. So it was one of the cheaper options. It does cover the engine, the oil pan, and transmission. As you guys probably know, the Rubicon already has a transfer case skid plate and a gas tank skid plate. So it's not the best option. It's certainly not as good as the full belly pans that you'll see a lot of guys put on. But this is $300, and some of those full belly pan systems end up being $2,000. So hopefully it'll be a good interim solution. I may put one of those full belly pans on at some point, but not today. Before we get started though, guys, do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow this channel. I'm really trying to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, so you guys can help out, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been about 1 month, maybe a month and a half since I posted that original install video, and we had a problem, so I've actually pulled down the video and edited it. There's 4 bolts on the front of the skid plate that ASFIR originally had me install, with the long part of the bolt going out and having a nut on it. And those bolts were too long by about ½ an inch or so. And when I originally installed it, I didn't see any problems with it. It just made it easier to install. I think that's probably why they had me do that originally, and why they had it on their diagram to do so. The skid plate didn't really come with instructions, so that's why I created this video. So I kind of had to find that out on my own. But when we had the front sway bar disconnected, we heard some popping noises when we were on rough terrain where we're getting a lot of articulation. And unfortunately, I didn't figure this out until we went on a few rides, that those little bolts that you'll see later were actually taking some chunks out of my front differential cover. I did finally discover it, and the remedy is going to be just to flip those bolts around. I'm going to put a time code on the screen here so you can see to how I remedy that. If you just want to jump to that, maybe you've already installed it and you just want to see the damage that occurred and maybe what you need to do to fix that. Otherwise, we'll just continue on here with the install as I did it originally. All right, here's the box I got today. There's my dog. But anyway, we've got the box today from Israel, and I ordered it on September the 6th, and I got it on September the 25th. So what's that, 19 days? So 2.5 weeks or so to get it. I picked it up a little bit earlier. I think that it weighs about 10 to 15 pounds. I'll weigh it once I get it out, but I wanted to show you what the box looks like. I'll give you guys another look when I get it opened up here. So here's what it looked like after I got it out of the box.
Not very good instructions. That's all that came with it. Nothing on the back of that. Just basically a diagram. It has these funky little bolts with a rod on it. Not quite sure how that's going to work. And these brackets have a welded on bolt, which will be interesting. I'll see if I can figure it out. I'll probably have to watch someone else's YouTube video to see if I can figure out how to install it. I did weigh it on a bathroom scale, so it's not super accurate, but I think it's reasonably accurate. It is a digital scale, and it's been somewhat accurate when I've tested it in the past, and it weighed in at 21 pounds. So a little bit heavier than I was thinking from the box, but still not bad. You could do a lot worse. So we'll see how hard this is to install next. Here's all of the contents of this plastic bag kind of laid out, and I'm kind of glad I laid it out. The instructions were not very good at all. We can see we've got the left bracket here as shown, and then we've got the right bracket here as shown. And what was kind of throwing me for a loop was these little nubs. It's got one on each side that goes towards the rear of the vehicle. I can't find any instructions online, nor, like I said, did it come with any of them instructions. So I think that these don't have a nut that go on them, from what I can tell. I think they just are kind of a placeholder to help you line it up, probably provide a little bit of strength as well. But it appears from the diagram that there's no nut. That nut and washer goes with this sort of weird
what do they call that? They call that a remote bolt. And that goes inside the frame from what I can tell and pokes through this bracket to the back side. And then you have this basically a lock washer and a regular nut that goes on the back of that. So I'm kind of glad I laid it all out. I made sure that there was no extra nuts or anything, and so basically from counting there's not one to go on this. So it took me a while to figure that out, but I think that's the way it goes. I may contact the company to try to figure that out a little further. I am going to use some Loctite on everything just to make sure that it doesn't wiggle loose, and I'll probably go ahead and check it for tightness after running it for a bit as well. But that's what the content looks like. It looks like it's going to mainly be 13 millimeter and 19 millimeter bolts, heads, and nuts that I'm going to have to tighten up. I think that I'll probably end up using those two sockets and a wrench, but we'll see. Here's what the stock 2020 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon looks like underneath before I've added any skid plates. We're looking forward now. So you can see the oil pan up here. Looks like it has zero protection basically. They say this has a transmission skid plate, but really it's only got this bar. It's still pretty exposed. I would say that it has a transfer case skid plate, you can see right here, and then a gas tank skid plate. I would have thought that it only has those two skid plates, although when I looked on my sticker it said that it had a transmission skid plate, but that's not much of a skid plate. So that's what it looks like before the install. I'll show you a little bit more later. Alright, this is looking at the driver's side. The remote bolt, they're calling it, I believe, is on the right side with the blue thread locker you can see I've got on it. And that hole, it's kind of hard to see to the left, is where that stub is going to go. So we're going to try to put that on. I'm going to push the bracket up through here, and you can see the stub is going to go up to that hole right there. Oops, I'm sorry, right above it. So I'll try that and see if I can get that bolted on. Again, that stub on the left is not going to have a nut on it. And sorry about the bad camera angle there though, but the bolt with the blue thread locker will go on that hole right underneath it. I'll poke that through and put a washer and a nut on it. We'll see how that goes. Alright, here's a shot of that bracket on the driver's side installed again. I don't have it all the way installed. I'm going to wait and tighten it all the way down once I get the rest of the skid plate installed, because it may need to wiggle just a little bit on the install. But it was a little bit of a chore to get that remote bolt put through with a washer on each side of it while holding it all up there, but it wasn't too bad. It was definitely doable. So we'll move on from here. Here's the passenger side. It's kind of the same deal. The nut you're seeing is towards the front of the vehicle, and that the bolt, little stub, is towards the back of the vehicle, and that's the passenger side again. Kind of the same thing. A little easier on the passenger side. There's a little bit more room to work with. However, the part that you're mounting it to is bowed a little bit. I'm not showing that very good. It bows out, and so it's not flat, so that's going to be interesting. It lets this thing wiggle a little bit, which I assume once I get everything else put on, it'll tighten up. And again, I've got that kind of loose, so we'll tighten it up as we get further along. I think the next order of business is we're going to... Alright, at this point I'm kind of doing a dry fitting here without everything screwed in. I just got it hanging by those back 18 millimeter nuts, just very loosely, and then we've got to put two, I think they're calling them sheet nuts, in a couple of those holes. So that's going to allow me to line those up. I'm not sure which way they go yet. And then I'll probably actually line up the front first, because right now I've got quite a bit of wiggle room, or at least a little bit. And so I'll get the four bolts that go on the front of that going next. See how that goes. That dry fit worked pretty well. I was able to get at least a proof of concept going on. Got it all lined up. I don't have it tightened down yet. Having a little bit of trouble with this first one right here. It's not quite lined up, so I'm gonna just hit it with a hammer a little bit and see if I can get it to line up. But other than that,
went pretty well. I was a little concerned about those front 4 bolts, those at the top left of the screen you can see right now, getting my hand to the back side of there, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, so not too bad, not super easy, but not super difficult either. So I'll see if I can get all this tightened up and hopefully finished up. I apologize if there's background noise. It started raining here, but I wanted to show a final install video clip here before it got too dark. So there it is, everything tweaked on the bolts and everything, tightened up. It was a little harder to get that front end lined up than I thought. Those stubs that I showed you earlier on one of the first steps for the brackets that mount up to the engine mount or whatever, I had a hard time keeping those aligned. I should have tightened those a little bit tighter at first, but all in all, came out with a pretty clean install. Ended up taking me about 2 hours probably, but I'm slower than Christmas, so I would guess that most people could do it in an hour, probably 45 minutes for somebody that knew what they were doing. You can see I'm working on my garage floor here as well, so if you had a lift or a jack on jack stands, whatever, it'd probably be a lot easier. This is the final set of tools that I used. I probably didn't need the blue Loctite. The nuts that they provided had the little nylon inserts that I think keep them from vibrating off, and they did provide a couple lock washers on the 2 that didn't have that. Ended up having to hammer on a couple of these guys right here, actually just one of them. I had to hammer on one of those to get it to kind of nudge the right direction. Ended up using all of my socket sizes. It's a 1/4-inch drive, I believe, about 13 millimeter on it, and 19 and a 13 millimeter on my 3/8 inch, and then it's a 3/4-inch drive or 1/2-inch drive. I'm not sure what that is, but anyway, I ended up using the 19, 18, and the 13 millimeter on that. And this was super handy. That's about a $3 magnetic tray that I got at Harbor Freight. I'd never used that before. That came in quite handy to keep all of the bolts straight.
All right, this next part of the video is how I actually fixed the problem that I was having with those 4 small bolts on the front of the skid plate. I ended up cutting the 2 front ones off and fixing the threads, and then I flipped the back 2 around to where the heads are on the outside instead of the inside. If I had it to do over, I would probably just flip them all around to where the heads were on the outside. I don't know why I didn't do that. Well, actually, maybe I do. I think I thought it was going to be harder to get those bolts in, because it is kind of hard to reach your hand to the inside of the skid plate to hold those. I think that's why ASFIR had us originally install them the way that they did. However, like I said, I would just install the bolts with the heads on the outside, and that would fix it. So if you want to see what I did, that's what the rest of the video is about. All right, here is where it's coming in contact with the front differential cover. I'm going to zoom out there, and so you can see that is the back right side. I'll back up here a little bit more of that front diff cover. We're looking forward, and then here's the whole skid plate. So it's the front end of the skid plate, and we've been hearing a popping noise, and I'm guessing that's what that was. I'm going to go ahead and cut that bolt head off to where it's flush, and hopefully it'll alleviate that. All right, it had messed up those threads worse than I thought. I'll try to zoom in on that a little bit for you, but they're in pretty bad shape. Hopefully I'll be cutting all that off, and then I'll use the actual nut to go ahead and remake the threads after I cut it. And it actually got into the nut a little bit as well, you can see. So a little bit worse than I thought, but I think we'll be able to salvage it. I'm just going to take a hacksaw and cut part of that off. I measured just with my crescent wrench here, and that's how much I need to take off. So I'll be taking it off. Up the threads a bit. They were in pretty rough shape, and I thought I would just use the original bolt, which is here. Sorry about that. And those threads were in bad enough shape that I actually took a known bolt nut rather that had good threads, and used those to clean them back up. I think I will go ahead and use the original nut. So I took a file and cleaned it up a little bit, just took a hand file and manually cleaned the threads up on the end here, and also just tapered that edge a little bit. It makes it a lot easier to do. So I'll just reinstall it. I think we're going to mark these. I think I'm probably going to blacken the end of both ends of the bolt. I might write an F on that, so if you have them all laid out, somebody at a dealership or something might take note that those go on the front. So anyway, we'll see how it goes from here. One more thing, I am adding some blue Loctite on there, and what I wanted to show you was I just discovered this blue Loctite that's in like a chapstick delivery device, and it's so much cooler, it doesn't drip. So I've pre-applied it there. Normally when I mess with Loctite, it's dripping all over the place and I don't feel like I get it where I want it. So anyway, if you don't know about that stuff, it was kind of expensive. I think I paid like $10 for that tube on Amazon, but hopefully it'll last a long time and it's just a lot easier to deal with. So I thought I'd just tell you guys about that. All right, here's what it looks like after that bolt has been cut down. So there's quite a bit more clearance. Here's my pinky. That's probably about a ½ inch, which I'd like a lot more than that, but that's what we got. All right, here's the passenger side bolt sticking through, and it's taking a small chunk out of right there. You can see, I think that's out of that. I'm not sure if that did that or not, to be honest with you. The actual bolt head looks pretty clean, so it may not have, but I would like a little bit more clearance there, so I think I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side as I did on the driver's side. This is the passenger side we're looking at. I believe this is maybe the front axle disconnect motor. I think that's what it is, the FAD. So I'm going to chop that one off as well, just to give us a little bit more clearance. All right, here's that passenger side after I'm done cutting that off. You can see there's a lot more clearance. I think I'll be a lot happier with that. I decided to go ahead and reverse this other bolt on the right side here, this one. It sticks out a bit, and last night I got to thinking that maybe I installed these wrong, but no, I actually looked at the instructions or diagram and I installed them the way that they told me. But nonetheless, I think I'm gonna go ahead and reverse that one so that extra doesn't stick out. It'll be a little bit easier than cutting it off. All right, there it is on the driver's side after I reversed the bolt and cut off the front one. They probably should have told us to do that from the beginning, that way on the diagram, but I think that's probably going to be better off. There's much less sticking out for it to hit on. And I'll move around over here to the passenger side. So same thing there, reversed it, a lot more clearance. So that's what it looks like after it's done. I would have reversed it on the front, but it was harder to get to, so you can probably reach it. I just had a hard time reaching my hand in there, so I thought it might be hard to actually put that nut on the end of the bolt, but you could probably do it. One more quick thing to note, I did have to contact their customer service for a few different things, and they were quite responsive and quite helpful, so that's always a good thing when I'm dealing with the company. I thought I'd throw that in this video just to let you guys know. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you found this useful. Please do me a big favor and like and subscribe. Thank you so much.